Welcome to the In Betwixt and In Between. This is Leadership Limbo, a podcast aimed at helping leaders embrace the discomfort and power of leading themselves and others in the midst of it all. We blend real insight with practical tools to help you lead with self-awareness, purpose, and influence wherever you are on your leadership journey. My friend Josh Hugo, how are we doing today? How are things?
Hey, John. Pretty good. Still recovering a little bit from that unfortunate Miami-Notre Dame game last weekend, but some opportunities for leadership from the great coach Marcus Freeman. So if any of you listening to this have inroads to the Notre Dame's athletic office and believe that Coach Freeman would like the opportunity to join this podcast, please let us know. We think he's an excellent leader and would have a lot to share with those who listen. But in all seriousness, doing pretty well.
Well, and if he doesn't work out, we'll happily go with Pete Bavacqua. I mean, he's fine also.
Yeah, we'll take him. Lou Holtz. I mean, we'd have to use the speech editing capacities of Riverside Studio to kind of clean up some of the difficulty of understanding Coach Holtz these days. But yeah, doing okay. How are you today, John?
Doing great. Luckily for our listeners, there's a bye between now and when we post this, so these comments won't be old. There won't be either two losses or another win under a belt by that time. Doing great. Been, lovely getting into the month of September. I know a lot of people are kind of getting back into the flow of things after summer, where, as we all know, whatever industry you're in in and out, vacation. So this real sense of folks that I'm talking to and working with, that it's really been good to get kind of teams together and feel like it's kind of part two of the year, right? You're marching forward. And I think that's really exciting for us. And it feels like this podcast has come along at a good time to engage with you all as we're kind of marching forward with the year with you and giving some ideas that we hope can help your leadership, especially if you're a mid-level leader. And so I want to turn it back to you, Josh, to revisit some items from last week and what that's going to lead us into when it comes to the topic this week.
Awesome. Yeah, and welcome back to our East Coast educator friends who probably just started school this week, post Labor Day. So schools are back in session for all of our educators. So hope it's been a wonderful back to school.
Northwest Oregon, welcome back as well.
Welcome back in the Northwest too. So, but yeah, thanks for the lead up. So last week we talked about a number of pieces related to vision, and thinking about how to internalize and act on vision that is not created by you. And we left with this idea of internalization. Did you take some efforts to better internalize that vision? Did you think about integrating vision into your strategy, into your tactics? Did you weave it into the flow of your day in some realized way? Self-preservation. We also talked about one of the reasons that folks, myself included at times, have resisted fully buying into another vision was maybe less of a resistance to the concept itself as much as it was a element or elements of self-preservation behaviors coming out within my own self. If you reflected on that, would love to get your feedback in our comment section about how that might have affected your work this past week.
Yeah, and I
John,
do want to share a few comments. We post these on our LinkedIn to kind of get some ideas out there and hopefully get people to listen to the podcast. Erin Waller Cleveland, friend of mine, she's a consultant mostly in math education. She noted like this idea that Josh brought up about self-preservation is really key. But I think one thing that she highlighted that I think we got at our podcast, but I don't think it was stamped as well when I re-listened, is conflict is good. We also don't want a lot of yes people, yes men, yes women who are just simply going along with a vision. And I don't think that's what we were indicating. I think we understood that like that internal need to know it is important, right? And so she really highlighted that. And I really wanted to emphasize that and thank her for sharing that thought, that you want teams that engage in the conflict, but it is at some point about moving forward and embracing it for the good of the team, not for just self-interest. And then another friend of mine, or colleague of ours, Lisa Freisha, who does some of this work, she's out in New York. She talked about just that she sees this all the time with mid-level leaders, right? That they aren't even spending the time really thinking about the vision and how they're leading from that. They're just so caught in the midst of executing, right? So would recommend people check them out, follow the work that the two of them are doing, and thanks to both of them for engaging as well.
Yeah, great shout outs. Thank you, Lisa and Aaron. And that kind of hits that last point from last week, which is the concept of disagree and then commit. And perhaps you applied that in your work this last week. And if so, would love to hear how that went. So to kind of move us towards today, we're moving into this realm of focusing on this changing nature of relationship. So as you move into your different titles, maybe from an individual contributor to a manager to possibly a senior manager, director, etc., there is a change in relationship to yourself, to your peers, and to your work. And so we want to spend some time today talking through that. And the kind of sequence of how we envision this progressing over time is starting first with a lot of the work around that internal identity awareness and how that awareness of your own shifts that you might have anticipated and in some cases maybe did not anticipate, how to think through that and some strategies to navigate. And then in future episodes, coming back to the changing relationship between you and your manager and how you need to put on a different hat than maybe you did as an individual contributor. And then ultimately, that third part is how to navigate the relationship with those you manage. So internal, the second is you and your manager. And the third kind of stage we'll get to is managing those who you lead. So,
Mhm.
John, I want to pass it to you and hear a little bit more about how you're thinking about that first stage in manager identity.
Yeah. And so Josh and I, in kind of setting up the episode here, we came up with some ideas and based on our experience and in discussing this with others about what are the nature of some of these changes that people feel, right? When it comes to the types of relationships they have and how they're trying to establish those. Want to put in a plug that, again, these didn't necessarily come from a book. They come from lived experiences and ideas that we had, although I'm sure they are replicated in books and literature out there. We would love folks who listen to this to find ways to share with us, either messaging with us on social media platforms or emailing us or whatever it might be, to share ways that you have within yourself seen these shifts in identity and how that's impacted your relationships with others. And then, we would like to bring those up on the next episode. So I want to engage you there. I think the very first one we want to talk about is just the added weight of authority that you feel when you are a mid-level leader or coming into leadership in general. So again, this doesn't have to be just for someone who just started leadership this year or the past month. You might be grappling with this and you're 2 or 3 years into it, right? And you're really trying to figure out, well, what is my authoritative role in this? I think if folks know Josh and I don't think we would identify ourselves as authoritarian leaders. We don't lead from a sense of fear or simply about process, that it's all only about like results at all cost. I think we very much believe in the idea of collaborative efforts and team effort and knowing your team and knowing yourself really well to get to those results. However, when you step into any position, and I think Josh will talk about this later on as well, and another one of these ideas we have, you are an authoritative figure to someone. You have the role of ensuring that you're driving a team towards outcomes because you're not an individual contributor who just has, a singular focus or effort within the project or the team. Your job is to make sure all the pieces coalesce and come together. People look to you to make decisions about how all of that works together, right? And so what do you begin to experience? You begin to feel the weight and stress of that, right? You begin to feel that, that the slightest feelings of power and authority, maybe you don't like that and you're uncomfortable with it. People who you used to be really close with, who you had a lot of camaraderie with, now look at you as someone who maybe they have to be against sometimes because of decisions you make, or you might feel that you're in more opposition to them because you not only have to worry about this particular project, but how it matches up with the rest of the organization. Right. So I'll give an example for me, and Josh, I think you can empathize with this as well. When I actually first came into leadership, I was asked to start a school, I was working at DSST Public Schools, opportunity. By the way, DSST Conservatory Green, along with a lot of other DSST schools, rated green. I think 15 of their 16 schools.
Woo!
Shout out. Super proud of that organization. Thrilled I was a part of it for as long as I was. But when I first started, you got, 12 teammates. Josh, you were one of them. We're starting the school up, 150 kids. It's got this like real just close-knit team sort of vibe. You can manage in a way that is like on the same level with everyone, right? And sure, you're making decisions, but there's a sense that you're kind of making it in close-knit quarters. As we grew out, and remind you, this was only my first year or second year in this type of leadership, you begin to feel the weight of like, as you're distancing yourself from teammates, not intentionally but it's just a larger organization. You have 55 people to account for. You have 450 families and kids to account for, multiple grade levels, multiple programs within the school. People begin to look at you differently. And these people who you were close with and you felt like you were all just kind of making decisions together, now you have the added weight of like, I'm in charge of a lot more people. I have a lot more constituents to concern myself with than just the first 12 people I worked with. And you begin to feel that, and you begin to feel yourself shift in distance from people because you do have the weight of authority, of decision making, whatever it might be. And so you're going to feel that shift, especially if you're in something that's kind of startup or new and that's getting bigger and people begin to see you at a distance as well. So, Josh, other thoughts related to
Yeah,
that?
I think
Authority?
that's a great overview. I would also add that while you might feel the stress of that added authority, it is also possible, and not necessarily, I don't want to say bad or good, I don't want to put a judgment statement, but it could be a tendency to say, ooh, look at this. I
Yeah,
have some authority. I
that's
have
true.
some
Right.
power. I could come in a little bit late, and guess who's going to say anything about it? Nobody, except maybe the person who
Mhm.
comes in to visit my building once a month. And so you also have to be aware that in that added weight of authority, you could look at that through a sense of greater responsibility, or you might want to catch yourself thinking through it as a greater sense of power that you have. And that also can become, what do they say? All power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And it's not actually that far from lived experience for those who have greater positional authority. That is something you have to be mindful of in that shift as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. I hadn't even thought about it. It's just, yeah, when you move up, there might be less eyes on you all the time, right? Or there's an
Yeah.
assumption that you'll handle a
Yeah.
certain way, and how are you going to like how are you going to do that, right? The role in your calendar shifts a little bit, like that's going to go with it, but is it going to shift in a way that you're taking some breaks or the easy way out when you couldn't do that before because of your position?
Or just dominating somebody by just saying, I'm going to challenge you to do this and not provide any support because I can, right? As your manager, you need to do this. And I think that it's a really key part of greater self-awareness that we should all take account for.
And I guess not to belabor this point, but I actually find this interesting. I've been working with a client this week and their team, and part of it's just doing some one-on-one work with them. And one of the things that's been a tendency that I've heard when discussing it with folks has been a lot of times the feeling from individual contributors that decisions by leadership are more like demands than collaborative processes, right? And I think sometimes when people get into leadership, because they don't want to deal with the struggle of people who might push back on an idea, or in this case, like I'm actually taking a decision from even higher up and relaying it to you, it becomes almost easier to just say, this is the way it is, rather than a process of more like, okay, let's get our boots on the ground. Let's talk to some folks. Let's build it up. Let's help build context. We'll share the decision because ultimately we have to share the decision, but we want folks to have a deep understanding of it. Sometimes that work is a little bit more time intensive, right? And so it's a lot easier to just come in with, well, I'm in charge now. Authority, demands, let's go.
Yeah.
So good points.
Yeah. Another piece will be stress and tendencies. And so a lot of folks, we know this statistically to be true, move into management because they are adept and skilled at the technical spaces that they were previously doing. So a great nurse becomes a great nurse, well, becomes a nurse manager, not yet necessarily a great nurse manager without development. A great teacher becomes a teacher coach. A great financial analyst becomes a financial analyst manager. And the skills that got you to be successful in that independent individual contributing role are not going to be the same skills that will make you successful as a leader. And once you add the combination of this added weight of authority and the stress that you probably feel and responsibility you hopefully feel for your people, and you start staring down the barrel of a very difficult situation early in your career, you're going to revert to the stress, or excuse me, you're going to revert to the skills that you had previously created, but not come up with a new set of solutions in that moment that maybe are the solutions you needed to solve that problem. So, put differently, under stress, we revert to our habits, whether they are good or whether they are bad. And so, if you haven't practiced, learned, and developed fluency with ways of navigating complex situations that apply to you as a people leader, as a manager, and not just as a skilled practitioner of whatever it is you do, you are going to revert to maybe the way that your previous manager handled situations with you. You're going to revert to tendencies that might even get a little Freudian here, but to the ways that your own family raised you and to the practices that you saw parental figures or parents or authority figures in your own experience acting when they confronted situations that you are now seeing. And so we're going to go back to those types of behaviors accidentally unless we become way more intentional. And so, again, another exercise to think through as you're listening to this: what's the last time that I was really stressed as a leader? What did I do? And was that a behavior that I chose to develop and learn and practice and apply, or was it actually maybe a little bit of my subconscious? Was it a previous habit I hadn't put any extra attention to? Was that even a relic or a mirrored behavior of some other leader I've seen that I didn't actually feel happy with as I did it, but that's just what I knew to do in that moment?
Yeah, I mean, this takes time. I mean, the truly self-aware leader, which we're going to talk about later, so I don't want to get too much into that. But they're going to, and this is where if you are managing new leaders, actually you owe it to them to do an exercise with them of saying, hey, what are the habits and the behaviors and the dispositions that got you here, right? And those are great. You don't want people to lose sight of them. And sometimes when you move into a management position, because as we've said in previous episodes, this is a different skill set than just, sometimes the things that you did as an individual contributor. If they are over relied on, it has an inverse impact or a negative impact on the way you lead a team, right? Just because you have really high order, like you have really high routines, you have really high, ways of doing it. While that worked for you when you were setting your course on your individual component of a project, if you're managing others, you're going to need to have a little bit of flexibility, perhaps, about how things are done, right? You're going to have to learn that. So keep that order so your team can be routinized and go through a process together. But certainly you have to let go of some things if you're going to lead a team towards it. So spot on, Josh. I mean, I think we have to be aware of what got us there, but that doesn't mean doing them the exact way or having the same exact behaviors is going to equal success in the management role, right? Yeah. Yeah. To go into the next one here is we created it's a terrible acronym. TIDKWIT, I think. I don't think
TIDQUIT.
we'll be able to use that going forward. What is it?
TIDQUIT.
TIDQUIT. This is the I don't know what I did today challenge that a lot of new leaders have. And I think we've all sat with this, right? So I've actually worked with a leader recently who said this is sometimes people ask him, what do you even do on a daily basis? And he said, I actually don't know. I don't know how to name that. Here's the truth. As a manager or a leader, it's not that you don't know. It's just that we're so conditioned in a good way, often as early career professionals and individual contributors, to get an aspect of a project done or to hit a deadline. Often in management, it's looking at how all the pieces are getting together and making sure that they're making the right progress. Or it is connecting with people to make sure that they feel a part of the team, making sure that they feel connected to what the organization is doing. Oftentimes it's thinking a little bit long term if you're in the position to think long term strategy, you're doing that. Or for the folks we're most likely talking to, it's just, is my team making the right progress it needs towards this thing? At the end of the day, you can't always you can't always say, look what I made. I often draw this analogy to people. I worked with my uncle's construction company, DeWeese Construction. Any family members out there talking to you? I loved working construction because at the end of every day, I could say, we
Tangible.
built that wall. There's
Yeah.
a new floor in. We poured some concrete, right? That was really great. There's complications and difficulties with that, but it was a great aspect of that job. So much of my life as a teacher and a leader, it's hard to say that sometimes. And I think when you rise into management, even if you're the manager of a construction company, it's still about, is that team making the right progress that I need them to make on that house or that building? And sometimes it's hard to say, well, did I build the wall? No, someone else did under my leadership. And so you're going to deal with that. The first thing to do is condition yourself to know that you are doing things, right? If you're a good manager, there are things you're doing, and things like building relationships, making sure a process is going in the right direction, making sure you're leveraging people's strengths is real tough work. So don't say to your folks, I don't know what I did today. Sometimes it's going to feel that way, but let them know, like, I really believe in what we're
Definitely
doing.
don't say that.
Well, I agree with that, but a lot of people do because I think they feel that way. And so that's where you go from, again, the doer to the manager or leader. You're helping everyone make sure the pieces are coming together and going in the right direction. But certainly it's a huge shift when at the end of the day, you might look at it. Before, when I was a teacher, I taught a class and I said, hey, we hit this concept. I gave this quiz. Here's the results. That's great. and teaching's even a hard job for that sometimes. But the ability to say I did something to when I was coaching teachers, often it was like more difficult to see the day-to-day successes.
Right.
Josh, additions to that?
Yeah. I mean, this will sound contrived or like silly, but I actually mean it. Like pick up a hobby, like
Yeah.
start gardening,
Yep.
build something, do something in your day to day that gives you a sense of that completion.
Hmm.
And it really starts to help you kind of, I think there's a craving for humans to have purpose and to have meaning and to have something to do, to work. And sometimes the work of people doesn't have a very tidy opening and closing. And so it is important. And I found myself picking up lots of habits outside of my own work that were much more tangible. So find something that you can actually finish. Well, maybe reading is nice, but if you're reading, Tolstoy in a 900-page book, you won't finish that unless you're really, voracious. Find something you can start and finish in a day. It might even just be as pragmatic as, "Hey, honey, can I start doing the dishes for you? And I'll finish that and make this kitchen look really clean." And if my partner's listening to this, she is definitely going to come home and tell me, "Yeah, wouldn't that be nice if you offered it?" And I would say I usually do that. But in all seriousness, having something concrete to do would be a great addition. I want to add one other point before we kind of move to our closing part here of what do we do about this? What are some of the initial solutions? The other change that you're going to experience is about the vertical relationship that you start to have with your peers. And not to get too into marks, but really what you're kind of getting into is that you start representing a class of like the owners of production, right? All of a sudden you have moved from maybe the working class to the managerial class, the management class. And whether you wish that to feel different, or if you really hoped, I'm still the same guy that I was before, you aren't. You aren't. And it's not maybe fair, but your positional authority has now changed. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that. It does mean there will be some fundamental shifts in terms of how you must act and how you must treat others in ways that you have to be a little bit more mindful of what you're saying and doing. It doesn't mean be inauthentic. It doesn't mean change your core, but it does mean you can pretend as much as you wish that it hasn't changed, but it has. And I think that just naming that shift in terms of institutional class is a reality that we all have to confront and face when this happens. John, any other last thoughts there?
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's worth saying when you're a member of a team as an individual contributor, you can isolate yourself to a few people on your team that maybe even like for whatever reason you're drawn to and it's easier to have a relationship with and really, you know, be connected to them, have a relationship with them, and then have pretty shallow relationships with others. When you become a manager, you become a lot more to a lot more people, right?
Well said. Yeah.
And so people who have different identities than you, people who have different ways of working, no longer can you say like, well, they can do their thing over there. I'm going to stay here. Your job is actually to be more to those people. And so because they're relying on you, because they're looking up to you as the person who brings the team together. So something to think about is like, it is your job now to be a lot more to a lot more people as well. So
Yeah. Really well said. I agree with that. And it's not easy. That's why one of the reasons we're doing this podcast is it does carry with it real thickness of impact. And it's a role, it's a type of role that you shouldn't take lightly. And you should not take lightly if you're a leader who promotes managers on this call or on this podcast. You should be mindful that there needs to be development. There needs to be explicit training for people who do this work because it is not simply a matter of being good at one thing and automatically being good at leading and managing others. So, which actually is a nice segue into a little bit of what we're going to get to here, which is all right, well, what are a couple of tangible activities or actions that I can take, that you can take as a listener to help become better aware of the way that these relationships change and what to do about it? The first tool I want to share is the concept of a leader mirror. And that mirror implying that you are looking at yourself, that you are going internal to recognize what are my tendencies, what are the patterns of my behavior that create realities for those around me? So they create an impact on others. And so a couple of ways to think about this mirror and asking yourself these three questions could be a good place to start. One of which is, even you can scale score this from like 1 to 10. How reactive versus proactive am I? How reactive in my day-to-day interactions? And you assess yourself. If I feel like I'm constantly reacting to most things in my work, are my people experiencing a pretty reactive manager? Odds are yes.
Yep.
The second kind of dyad, if you will, how accidental versus intentional am I in my day to day? Did I design my day? Was I intentional with how I designed my calendar, with how I planned for this meeting, with how I thought about this language? Or did I kind of just lean fully on my instincts, my vibes, my ability to figure stuff out? What is the balance, right? Am I fully at intentional? Am I fully at accidental? Where am I in between it? Consider the impact of that in this leader mirror exercise. And how inconsistent was I today versus consistent? Again, the impact of this on your people is going to be what it is for you, right? So if you're saying, well, I wasn't inconsistent, or if I was really inconsistent today, but my people should all of a sudden be expected to be highly consistent, is that a fair expectation? If you're not consistent, your people are likely to mirror that as well. So want to share that, John, pass it back to you for perhaps some reflection on that, and then kind of the tool that you wanted to share with folks today.
Yeah. I mean, quickly, I just, what Josh's talking about there is the internal work matters first, actually, before it's just like, can I get my team to execute on this thing? Well, I mean, you're gonna have to do these things simultaneously, right? But it reminded me when Josh was talking, William Ernest Henley's poem Invictus, at the end, he says, I am the master of the fate. Oh, I'm sorry. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. If you want to have impact as a leader, I don't think we can just arbitrarily go through life and saying, well, that's who I am. That's the way I lead. These are the behaviors I exhibit. Other people have to deal with them. Embrace your behaviors. A lot of those behaviors are the things that got you there, that have made you successful. You still have to know that you have to know yourself well enough to know the negative and the dark side of some of those behaviors when done in the context of a team. So, I mean, Josh's questions are spot on. Please run through those on your own as well. The last one, I'll be quick on this one. It's just have a trusted circle. When you step into leadership, have a good friend named Nate Reven. He's always had what he's called his advisory board, like in his personal life. And I always thought that was really insightful and really thoughtful. If you don't have one, I can't say I necessarily have one, but get one for this move into leadership. Or if you're in leadership right now and you're figuring it out, give yourself one. These are folks that just provide you with insight of how you're showing up, how you're acting. Perhaps this could be the person who manages you. I don't think it's every member of your team, because sometimes when you're just kind of like going to everyone as a wet blanket, how can I be better? What am I doing wrong? Please let me know. Doesn't instill a lot of confidence, but you can pick a couple people who you know well that maybe you do manage, but you've known for a number of years, and be vulnerable with them, saying, hey, I really want to know, and I want you to have the safe space to tell me when I'm showing up in wrong ways, or where habits and behaviors that I've had previously are now coming through to the team in a more negative way, right? So build yourself a trusted circle, 3-4 people who are going to see that in you, who you can ask about, who you can dive into real deep conversations with as well. And so, Josh, before I get into the reflection, do you have any additions to that there?
No, I think that's well said.
Yeah. So here's what we want to do. The first one is, can you, as an audience, we're going to give you a couple homework assignments. I said one earlier. Share what you've heard other people say, or what you've experienced about the shift in identity that you've experienced as a manager. And why did it occur? Josh and I kind of gave you 4 of these, but we'd love to hear more. We know there's more out there of the different reasons for that and the feeling behind it. This, we hope, just equips more managers to give name and value to what they're feeling, but don't always know what it is, right? Or feel isolated and it's just them, when it's true that many managers and mid-level leaders are experiencing that. We'd love to shout your name out, text us, message in the comments of the podcast, email, LinkedIn, whatever works. Let us know. We'd love to share those next time. But hopefully you found some good use here to really begin to think about that internal work, that in the next few episodes, we'll really explore how that is impacting the relationships you have across the board. So with that, Josh, take it away.
Thanks, John. Appreciate everything that we've covered today and your insights as well. It's always fun. Like you've said before, we've planned these conversations up to an extent, but it's always great just to kind of take it to the next level and learn from each other as well. For those who are joining us, thank you so much for engaging in our comment sections. If you're doing that on LinkedIn, on our personal messages, emails, wherever it is that you can find access, we're hopefully as accessible as possible to all of our listeners. Drop us a line. disagree with something, shoot us an idea, ask if you want to come on the show as possibly a guest at some point. We would love to have real community engagement with those who are subscribing to us. That being said, please do subscribe if you are listening to this and have not yet hit subscribe. Please leave us a 5-star review and a positive rating. And share this with others. Drop it to a friend who does leadership, mention it in a conversation. We really do want to do this for you and make sure this is bringing real impact and value. So until next time, this has been Leadership Limbo, where we make space for the tension and tools for the journey. See you in the in-between.